And I've already had the pleasure to meet some of you either in person or online during previous meetings. And notably in Liège, for those who could make it, in the previous panel in September on creating and operating networks for young entrepreneurs. So today our topic is to discuss and exchange insights and entrepreneur skills and mindset, which is very key to our Youth Entrepreneurship Policy Academy. Whose ambition for this academy is really to instigate policy changes in favor of young people through improved mutual understanding among policymakers, experts, and young entrepreneurs or their representative networks. So that's I would say the membership of our academy is to put these people together so that we understand better each other. And as a final outcome, we'll come back to this, we can develop some kind of good lessons learned for policymakers. On the European Commission side, as you already might be aware, it's important for us to promote youth employment and notably youth entrepreneurship as we try to make a positive impact on society. A few information in that respect is recently we just adopted the European Competitiveness Agenda, which will be our compass for the next 5 years at the European Commission. And it really puts a lot of emphasis on the importance of skills for all as really one of those enablers for competitiveness, and especially on the role of young people as well. With this new commission as well, as you know, probably we have our president, Ursula von der Leyen, committed to have much more engagement with young people, and all commissioners, so including my EVP, Commissioner Minzatu, they will have regular youth dialogues to engage with young people on our challenges and policy priorities for the future, so in each policy area. And we do believe that young entrepreneurship, is really the inspiring example that Europe is not just an old continent full of risk-averse people, but we do have a lot of potential, and we believe it's important that we put in place the right policy framework to allow you to really thrive in that environment. Skills I mentioned, we will also have an important proposal very soon on the union of skills. So because we do reconsider that skills, not just for entrepreneurs, but generally speaking, is a key policy instrument on which we need to work to empower more of the European Union. In the past, we already had a few initiatives like the Pact for Skills across industrial ecosystems, let's say. We have notably for, as you know, I'm more working on the social economy, social enterprises area. And we've had a number of projects like the BASE project. They had a conference recently in Brussels, which I could attend and was very interesting to define really which are the skills that are needed, especially for social economy entities. And for that, the kind of our reference framework is the European Entrepreneurship Competence Framework, the ENTRECOMP, which is also quoted in the note prepared by the OECD. And it's really the idea to empower people to turn ideas into action, create value, and embrace an entrepreneurial spirit that can drive the change that you aspire for. And actually, it's very important lifelong learning skills, not just for your professional life, but also in the personal life, to really free this entrepreneurial spirit and create value for all. In terms of, so where do you turn to try to get these entrepreneurial skills? Young people, we know, of course, you are still in between some of your education and lifelong learning, upskilling, reskilling. So it starts with schools, universities, and then when you move into the professional life, the role of coaches is very important. Networks, something we have been discussing over several workshops. And what we hear as well and see is that those MOOCs and are very also getting popular to get some training on entrepreneurship skills. So, and of course there are, I would say, the big players like the TED Talks and the YouTube things that I'm sure all of you already looked at, and some are very inspiring. But today, I think we really want to hear from you. So not the big CEOs who made it, but from you as well, and from your also your ideas, your challenges, because it's really how we think that we can devise good policies. And as always, today we want to reflect on what EU member states, local administrations, communities, you as individuals can provide to help the youth develop entrepreneurs, skills, and mindset. So what are about how to create the friendly ecosystem, which learning tools will be useful, which frameworks, access to information, and so on. So that's really what we need to discuss today. And I'm very happy to have you around the table. I'm very sure that we're going to have a very fruitful discussion, as every time with every workshop. And just maybe to announce that this actually we are entering the third year of this academy. So it's getting to a close, and the close actually will happen in October, where we are planning a closure event. But to get there and to make it really successful, we have the plan to develop together some sort of legacy documents that we will craft with your help to really try to identify lessons learned from these 3 years of exchanges across various topics, which you identify their priorities, to really have something, I mean, to put on the table, if I may say, as recommendations for the future, how we could improve the framework and the ecosystem so that youth entrepreneurs can really thrive in the EU and make it more competitive as we all wish. So thanks a lot. I wish you a very fruitful discussion. Unfortunately, I will have to leave rather soon because I have been asked to attend another meeting, but I will listen a bit at the beginning. And anyway, my colleagues are in and they will debrief me as usual. Thanks a lot and have a nice discussion.
Thank you very much, Brigitte. I'll now pass the floor over to John, who's the head of Entrepreneurship Policy and Analysis, for a welcome on behalf of the OECD. John?
Yeah, hello everybody. Delighted to be here with you. So this is the first YEPA event of 2025, and that's good news. And we're bringing together different groups. So we're putting you into new country groups at the moment for this event. And so that gives you the chance to exchange with others in the YEPA network who you might not have been in contact with so far. And so that's a chance to sort of build your networks. I hope that's useful to you today. Yes, the topic that we're talking about this morning is entrepreneurship skills and mindsets amongst young people. So those are the skills that people will need to be able to potentially start a business if they wish to, and also skills that they will be able to use in everyday life and skills that they can use as employees. So, you know, what are the skills? That's going to be one of the key questions, and how do we get them over to young people? The other key question. So like the European Union, youth is on the top of the OECD agenda. There's a couple of items that we could draw your attention to just to justify that level of importance that we say we give youth. There's an OECD recommendation. So that's our highest level sort of document, a recommendation. It's endorsed by the council, so all of the member countries of the OECD endorse the recommendation, and they commit themselves to taking action when they endorse the recommendation. The recommendation I'm talking about is called Creating Better Opportunities for Young People, and that came out in 2022. Article 3.4 says promote equitable access to entrepreneurship through counseling, including post-creation coaching, training of entrepreneurial competencies, access to finance and networks, and facilitating innovative entrepreneurship in post-secondary institutions. So that's important because the OECD will be monitoring countries in terms of how far they achieve that recommendation. And we also need to provide support to countries in order to achieve the recommendation. So this YEPA is of course, one of the ways with the European Commission that we are able to provide support and concrete guidance. So today we've got case studies, which will be interesting, presentations, the group discussions, and the chance to network. The questions that we'd like you to think about and to start, think about, draw out your ideas as we go along this morning. 5 sort of questions. What skills do you think are the most critical for young entrepreneurs to develop in the coming years? That's the first one. What skills? And then how can young people be empowered to employ entrepreneurial thinking outside of business creation? How can young people learn to assess the quality of information and online content on entrepreneurship? The fourth one, what tools and resources are important for trainers to have to successfully deliver capacity building programs to young people? So that's for the trainers. What do the trainers need? Not just what do the learners need? And then lastly, what are the advantages and drawbacks of the different formats of training that we could offer? You know, the face-to-face, the online only, the hybrid. So that's what we're going to go into. We're going to have another set of online workshops. So one online workshop for your group, group 3, and that will be in May or in June. And then we're going to be meeting again in person in Brussels. And the dates for that are the 6th to 7th of October. So please mark your calendar for the 6th to 7th of October in Brussels and look out for the details we'll send you. And so just to close off, thanks for your commitment. Thanks for your contributions over the last 2 years. It's great to see you've been taking advantage of the opportunity of this initiative to take the discussions back to your countries and that you're engaging with the YEPA community now. So do keep engaged and bring your ideas and help us shape YEPA. I will now close off for OECD and pass the floor to our country co-host, Vicky Tsangaridou Hadjipavlou, who is from the Ministry of Energy and Commerce and Industry, from our host, who is Cyprus. Thank you.
Yes. Hello from me also. Thank you very much for being the hosting country for this workshop today. Today's topic definitely is very important in the development of a young entrepreneur in starting and running his own business. Definitely, entrepreneurship requires both specific skills and mindsets. Successful entrepreneurs often eminent not just by their business judgment, by the way they approach challenges and opportunities for their business. Sometimes this can be innate, but sometimes can be educated. So it's very crucial to create an environment favorable to the development of both entrepreneurial skills and mindsets from early stages of young people, because this can lead to economic growth, more jobs and innovations. This can be through education and training programs, definitely entrepreneurship education in school curriculums from early early ages, focusing on critical skills, thinking, such as creativity, financial literacy, problem solving. Also in later adult life, in learning programs, vocational training, so to help them develop their entrepreneurial and digital skills, especially in rural and underserved communities. Facilitating networking and mentoring is very important also, because creating networks and platforms from successful and aspiring entrepreneurs can be very incredibly valuable to young entrepreneurs. By creating business incubators, accelerators, innovation hubs, can bring investors, mentors, entrepreneurs together to exchange ideas, help each other collaborate, and enlarging the ecosystem. Sorry? You hear me, right?
Yes, we can
Yes.
hear you. I think that was
Okay.
some accidental background noise. Please
Okay.
continue.
So definitely in our days, technology is the number one factor to develop a business in all aspects. So it's important that governments must develop a digital infrastructure, promoting digital literacy and training programs, supporting innovation in the fields of AI, blockchain, and Bitcoin. And something else that maybe we don't think about it, but it's very good to start promoting a risk-taking mindset that celebrates innovation at a point, but tolerates failure, because failure is also part of the journey to become a successful entrepreneur. So what we do here in Cyprus, mentioning all the above, government in Cyprus has been trying to build an entrepreneurship mindset in young people in early stages as possible. The Ministry of Education, in collaboration with the JA Cyprus, offer many programs from the primary school to higher education, and gives the opportunity to any student at any age to experience and learn about the business community life, financial literacy, and work readiness, and think big. Here I want to mention that there was an effort also to start writing the national strategy for the entrepreneurial education, but until now we haven't developed anything yet. But we're going to try, because we are one of the few countries we haven't any national strategy for the entrepreneurial education. The Central Bank of Cyprus, together with other financial institutions and the University of Cyprus, have completed 2 years ago the National Strategy of Financial Literacy and Financial Education, which is now applied in the secondary education together with the economic classes. The Human Resource Development Authority, which its mission is to create planned and systematic training and development in human resources at all levels and sectors, has a variety of seminars and training programs for knowledge and skills for the blue and green economy, programs for needs, for entrepreneurial skills, for digital skills, for unemployed, and many more. The Cyprus Productivity Center, which its role is in the areas of management, development, training, and productivity, has also quite a few training programs for digital skills, technical and vocational skills, health and safety programs, has the National YEPA Center, guidelines for employers and employees in the labor market, and postgraduate programs in management. There is a growing environment for a robust entrepreneurial ecosystem within the community of co-working spaces, accelerators, incubators, investors, business angels, the universities, centers of excellences, and a lot of EU-funded programs from the government. All of these together, they offer networking, networking opportunities, mentorship, collaborations, funding, and a lot of support for new businesses. Also, the government is making a lot of efforts to promote technology innovations in areas of fine technology, agri-technology, and clean energy. Of course, there are a lot of yet to be done, with no doubt, especially in the earlier years of young people in education, but also in the stages that the young entrepreneurs need to develop their own business, especially what we see with the bureaucracy and delays in the administrative and governmental procedures. Concluding, what we need to do, governments around the European countries, is to invest in creating an entrepreneurial ecosystem, because not only will support individuals in their ventures, but also will contribute to a broader economic prosperity. Ultimately, empowering entrepreneurs with the right skills, mindsets, and resources is a win-win situation for both individuals, society as a whole. This from me. I hope we have a very conductive workshop today, because definitely the right skills and mindset we will build a productive ecosystem and in the community.
Great. Thank you very much, Vicky. It's fantastic to hear that overview of the different issues and initiatives that are happening in Cyprus. Certainly, there are a lot of parallel actions in other countries, and we will pick up on many of the points that you raised throughout the agenda today, and certainly we'll come back with questions and we'll be able to talk further about many of the points you raised, the different types of education and different mechanisms we can use to help promote skills, entrepreneurship skills among young people. But without further ado, we will move on in the agenda. And so I will pass the floor over to Helen, who will give us a bit of a scene-setting presentation to get us into the discussions today. Helen, over to you.
Thank you. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, looks good.
Perfect. Okay. Well then, following up on the welcome and all of the many different activities we've heard, we have seen over the last decade that many governments across the EU and OECD have been increasingly supporting young people in entering the labor market, including through entrepreneurship. They have introduced a number of broad efforts, as Brigitte mentioned, the European Year of Skills or the Entrecomp framework, and as John mentioned, the OECD recommendation of creating better opportunities for young people in the OECD Youth Policy Toolkit that David will talk about later in today's agenda. But overall, one of the main areas of focus has been on fostering entrepreneurial mindsets and developing entrepreneurship skills among youth. By instilling entrepreneurial mindsets, young people are more primed to transform their ideas into action, whether this is related to business creation or not. Similarly, entrepreneurship skills are increasingly being recognized as a valuable set of transversal skills. While some of these skills may not be necessary for business success, possessing them is likely to increase the quality and sustainability of businesses led by young people. Young entrepreneurs also benefit from a range of skills when starting and managing businesses, and these can include workplace skills, just like any other employee, but also technical skills, business management skills, or personal entrepreneurial skills that lend a hand more to the success of entrepreneurship. While it's important to equip young people with these transversal skills, many of the skills needed evolve as new business models and practices emerge. For example, in earlier YEPA workshops, we have talked about how it's important for young entrepreneurs operating green businesses to cultivate specific skills such as complying with efficiency or emission standards. They also may need specialized AI or data science skills, such as coding and machine learning. Many of these skills will also continue to evolve with the development of the digital and innovative technologies that we're seeing today, which will require upskilling and reskilling. So, by fostering ongoing learning opportunities and providing young people with training, they can adapt to these new challenges and leverage emerging opportunities more efficiently. We also have to realize that despite a growing number of entrepreneurship education and training programs being available, many young people have continued to be held back by a lack of entrepreneurship skills. We see about 4 in 10 young people in the EU report that they have the skills and knowledge needed to start a business in the period 2019 to 2023. And this is compared to about 50% of adults. So we've also seen in the last year barometer survey that this tends to be a pretty strong barrier for young entrepreneurs, with about 31% of respondents signaling that skills and knowledge is an important barrier to business creation for young people. As we can also see across countries, these rates change, and that depends on a number of factors, including young people's confidence in having the skills and knowledge needed, whether or not they're likely to report this is also variable in terms of the social attitudes towards entrepreneurship, the availability and access to resources and support, including entrepreneurship education or training programs. But it's also important to recognize that many young people may overestimate their business management abilities and underestimate the challenges that they perhaps will encounter in the business creation journey. As we've already heard from our welcoming remarks, there are a lot of benefits to entrepreneurship capacity building schemes, and they really help to equip young people with the valuable skills and experiences needed in their career, regardless if it's business creation or not. These initiatives provide young people opportunity to gain transferable skills, which ultimately leads them to being more employable in the labor market in the case that they do not start a business. The wider benefits are increasingly being recognized, and these include generating more positive self-perceptions and increased self-confidence, developing entrepreneurial mindsets and learning how to work in flexible ways, preparing for the future, including for the digital and green transitions, as I mentioned earlier. They also help to stimulate growth and job creation by harnessing entrepreneurial talent among youth, and they help to address unemployment by upskilling and reskilling young people who are not currently employed or in higher education. We also see that there are a lot of different formats that these schemes can take, and they can be offered as standalone initiatives, such as a workshop or a boot camp, or they can be integrated and offered as packages. So we often see coaching and training schemes integrated with training schemes. Or for instance, in incubation and acceleration, they tend to have a whole package of support for young people. We also know that the format serves various purposes and allows for the tailoring of support even more to make sure that the needs of specific profiles of young people are being addressed. This can mean the mode of delivery changes, the themes covered change, intensity or frequency of training sessions can be adapted, and whether or not supports are offered in parallel, as I mentioned, including financial support. But overall, it's really important that these be adjusted to the needs of young people, but also the preferences of how they like to receive this information. We see increasingly that young people are looking to online sources to gain information on entrepreneurship and business creation, and that they're also more likely to seek it. So schools and universities remain the top method that young people look for in terms of entrepreneurship training opportunities. But right in second place is online content creation, including YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. So various platforms that are emerging that are not the same as the traditional pathways in terms of training in the past. So signals that young people have a preference for on-demand information using digital platforms that engage them, that entertain them, but also it poses challenges in terms of making sure that the information is accurate and credible, since these are non-official sources in many cases. And it's also important that young people learn how to uh, understand the information being provided. They may be more vulnerable to misinformation being spread, or even perhaps the feasibility of business creation. Content creators might create a false sense of optimism, provide inaccurate information, notably on legal requirements around entrepreneurship. So it's very important for young people to have critical thinking and digital literacy skills to maximize the benefit of these new sources. We also need to think about how to effectively design and deliver support schemes for young people. So to make sure, again, that their needs are being targeted, not only their preferences and needs, but also the needs as they change throughout the life cycle of a business. What young people might need at the very beginning stages in terms of business ideation is not necessarily the same of what they might need as they start to scale their businesses later on. It's also important to consider the impact of the format. We see that more intense or longer training formats tend to have stronger impacts, but they also come at a higher delivery cost. So weighing the benefits and costs of each format is very important. And then, as I've mentioned before, making sure that all different types of profiles of young entrepreneurs have opportunities, not just entrepreneurs with high growth oriented businesses, but also making sure that young people have access to programs and the needed skills such as digital skills. With the growing use of online training, it's very important for young people not to lose access, even if we think that they often have higher level digital skills than other generations. Over the last decade, as we've said, many governments have implemented a number of youth-tailored or dedicated strategies. Nearly 90% of the EU member states offer tailored entrepreneurship training schemes for young people. We see about 22 member states offering dedicated or tailored coaching and mentoring schemes for youth, and 2/3 of EU member states with dedicated business consultancy schemes. So many of these schemes have high take-up rates, and that's largely due to the targeted outreach initiatives and methods to attract and engage young people in these programs. Another new trend that we've been seeing is the introduction of learning platforms or applications for young people. And this includes the Entre for All at the EU level, but also country level initiatives such as How Fit Are You Starting a Business in Austria, or the YEPA platform in Finland. So we look forward to hearing of more examples of policies and programs that you might be working with or aware of that help to foster entrepreneurship skills and mindsets among youth, notably in the roundtable discussions, but also feel free to put them in the chat so that we can see and collect information. So with that, I will pass the floor back to David.
Great, thank you, Helen. So we will have time for a few questions in a couple of minutes. In between now and then, I just wanted to do a quick annex to Helen's presentation, which is just to pick up on a point that was raised during the introduction. We've got a new tool that you might be interested in learning about with regards to policies that support young people. So I just wanted to give you a quick overview of this. And here we go. So we've got a new youth policy toolkit that was released at the OECD at the end of last year. And this follows the recommendation from the OECD Council that was adopted in June of 2022. And so this is one of the main legal instruments that the OECD has to encourage and support countries to take action. So there are several recommendations issued every year, and it helps to spotlight priority issues for governments and encourages the Secretariat, which is people like me and Helen and John, to put increasing attention on these issues and our work, and to provide support to governments in implementing change to achieve the goals outlined in the recommendation. So this recommendation for supporting young people takes a whole of government approach. It has many different policy areas, and they're broken into these 5 pillars. And of course, entrepreneurship is a bit of a transversal issue, but it comes out most clearly in the part of the recommendation that deals with the labor market outcomes of young people. So following this recommendation, countries are encouraged to strengthen their policies in these areas. And we will be following up with the OECD Council to report on progress made by countries. And just as a quick side note, the OECD country would be the minister from each of the 38 OECD countries that represents the country to the OECD at the highest level. It's basically our board of directors. So following this recommendation, we've been working for a few years to develop a toolkit for governments. And the toolkit is intended to provide practical advice that illustrates steps that governments can take to strengthen policies. So it identifies different policy areas and essentially tries to provide a ladder for governments to advance to the next rung or two, depending on where they're starting from. And it's set out around case studies. And so the idea is that the case study would provide, a real practical example of what could be done and how it's actually being done right now in various countries. And so this toolkit is available as a book, which you can see here on the screen, but also as an online database and online tool. And unfortunately, there's not a snappy URL, so I couldn't put it on the screen. But in the version that we share with you after, I'll put a hot link so you can just click on the image and you can go there. Alternatively, you could just Google search OECD Youth Policy Toolkit, and certainly it will be the first thing. So this online database contains 72 case studies. And these case studies were compiled from a long list of many hundred different potential examples of what the OECD Secretariat thought were good cases. There were cases recommended by the various technical committees of the OECD. And we had a multi-step process in which we selected these 72 cases out of the long list that involved consultations with the committees and technical discussions within the OECD Secretariat. And I just want to let you know there are a few examples in there related to youth entrepreneurship initiatives and schemes. We've got one called Young Entrepreneurs Succeed, which was a multi-country initiative in Greece, Italy, Poland, and Spain. Essentially the same program, but was tailored in the different countries in different ways, focusing on slightly different target groups in some cases and delivering the support partner organizations. So that is a nice example. We've got Yes, I Start Up in Italy, which we've seen and talked about here at the YEPA before. And there's also an example called Young Rural Entrepreneurs in Colombia, which is about supporting young people who, live in outlying areas where there's not a market for the businesses operated by young people or even a job market nearby. So how do you support young people in these types of contexts? So of course, you're more than welcome to go looking through the database. There are cases covering all of the different policy areas. And so I'll stop there. I just want to let you know that this is new and available for you to use. So please check it out. Let all of your colleagues and friends know back in your country. And now's the time for questions. So if you have any quick questions for myself or Helen, we can take some now. Helen's put the link in the chat. I will pause for a few seconds. Please raise your hand if you have something to contribute. You can jump in. We're a small group. Don't be shy. Seems like there's no takers for the moment. Going once, twice, 3 times. Okay, we'll close it down for now. You can write down your question if it comes to you in the next few minutes, and we can certainly take it up a little bit later in the session today. So next on the agenda, we have Professor Blackburn. Professor Blackburn's the director of the Brett Centre for Entrepreneurship at the University of Liverpool. He's been involved in inclusive entrepreneurship work at the OECD for many, many years. And so we're quite happy that he was able to join us today because he's been doing a lot of work on youth entrepreneurship in recent years. And in fact, there was a process at the university in which they organized a number of different multi-stakeholder events, international events, to look at the current state of youth entrepreneurship support. And they produced a paper. And so we thought it would be fantastic if he could come along and share the results of that activity and tell us about what's happening around the world, especially focusing on the areas that we're talking about today of entrepreneurship skills and mindsets. So without further ado, it's a pleasure to introduce Professor Blackburn, and I pass you the floor. Over to you.
Thank you very much, David, and thank you very much for the invitation. I feel somewhat as an imposter, but I am very, very aware of the fantastic work that the YEPA's been doing, and even just looking at today's program, it's incredibly impressive. So I appreciate the invitation. One of the things, let me just share my screen. Where am I? There. Okay. Can you see that okay? Can you see that, David?
We can see it, it's just not full screen.
Okay, I'll go to full screen. How's that?
Perfect.
Okay, let me, I realize I've just got 10 minutes or so, so I don't want to go on for too long. But essentially, there is a report that there is a link to, and it's actually on the YEPA website. Some of you, I hope, will have seen that. And in a way, I feel that we've been, for obvious reasons in the UK, we've been undertaking research and activities almost in a parallel universe. But it's great that we've continued our work with the OECD. Where can I start? Well, let me just move to the next slide. By way of context here, we all would agree that in the last 5 years, we've seen a dramatic change in the environment within which young people are engaged. Environmental uncertainties, COVID. We hear about the AI summits that have been launched, new technologies. We've seen a rise in unemployment, younger people suffering a deterioration in their well-being. We've seen uncertainty in the economy. At the moment, we're in, even since I made these notes, it seems to have got a little worse because of what's going over in the US, possibly a rise in tariffs, which could potentially affect young people. At the same time, we've seen a rise in what we call the gig economy, where we've seen an influx of younger people taking up, in a very opportunistic way, opportunities to do some what I would describe as mainly precarious work. So really, the bigger context is quite a challenging environment. And so where does youth entrepreneurship policy fit into this? Well, I just share a little anecdote. After my PhD, I actually did a postdoctoral piece of study, and that was in 1990. And the first piece of work I actually undertook was looking at youth entrepreneurship within the UK. So I'm not saying I was started this. Actually, youth entrepreneurship policy and the attention to youth policy has been going on for decades. I would say at least 50 years. So really, I'm thinking about how impactful has policy been? Has it changed anything? One of the problems we have with youth policy in the past has been it's been conflated with so many different agendas, different policy spheres, education, employment, welfare and employment policies. And we've got different levels of jurisdictions. Obviously, we've got the UN, we've got the OECD, we've got the European Union. And more importantly, I would say at nation, state and regional levels, I feel that's where, to me, where the action is. So I feel that it's quite a complex environment for me to sort of try and explain, but certainly you're part of those ecosystems and part of those environments. And it's great to see that the OECD, through various mechanisms, is trying to shape, influence policies. And we've seen this step change. But actually, the big question we have is, and this is not a question about what's been said so far today, but generally, are policies fit to reach the diversity of young people and the challenges they face? Now, it's important from a competency and a skills basis, because really that's the heart of the matter. Are young people equipped to deal with the with the challenges they face in today's economy and society? So what's on the table immediately is we can't ignore the ratchet effect that the pandemic has had on face-to-face interaction. It seems to have accentuated disengagement from face-to-face and increased the online. We've seen disrupted learning for younger people. There's also, unfortunately, a rise in young people not in employment, education, or training schemes. In a sense, from a younger person point of view, there's been almost a postponement of, let's say, the transition into adulthood. And also, I've seen data recently which has shown that younger people actually are more and more continuing, if not even going back to live with their parents. So really, there's no surprise, therefore, that we've seen a decline in their well-being. Now, I'm painting quite a bleak picture, but really, I think we've got to grapple with some of these challenges. And how on earth can policies which are looking to increase the competencies and skills base of young people fit into that? We also, something was said very early on today about the actual broader, even bigger picture. From an economic point of view, it's important that younger people are, in a sense, that the power of young people are harnessed in an economic way. We've got an aging population. We've seen it, although in the Western world, we've seen a decline in populations. In the developing economies, we're also seeing a massive rise in the younger population. So again, there's some differences between regions across the world, but also the competences and the skill sets of these young people need attending to. There are also bigger issues, for example, the UN Sustainable Development Goals, the actual emphasis on well-being and decent work. Despite all this rather bleak picture I'm painting, young people, through all these various surveys, and we've seen some of the evidence today, pointed out earlier on today, that young people are incredibly attracted to the idea of being their own boss, running their own business, being entrepreneurial. The problem there is, and we've got to be very, very careful of promoting it too much, and actually it backfires because of their relatively poor success rate. So younger people may become disaffected with the opportunities that entrepreneurship can bring if by entering entrepreneurship they fail. So really what we've been trying to do is build up an evidence base. There's lots of evidence around, but really what we wanted to do was to actually bring something that was up to date. As David's already mentioned, we convened 3 workshops. We actually tried to bring to those workshops the full gamut of people who are interested in youth entrepreneurship, policymakers, delivery agencies, youth workers, educators, young people who run businesses themselves, and of course, researchers. So really what we were trying to do was a grassroots approach, incredibly qualitative. A lot of people have actually bring their own experience. It's an opportunity for them to share. And really for us to try and thrash out some of the key issues that young people are facing in terms of being more successful in entrepreneurship. One of the things that we're particularly interested in is, while we may have a perfect Rolls-Royce system of policy, one thing that came out really was the fact that quite a lot of younger people out there are disenfranchised from engaging with the infrastructure and the apparatus that's available. We actually asked young people what was the particular challenges that they face. Now, we all know about this so-called intentions gap. Maybe about 40% have an intention, but less than 10%, depends on the nation states figures, but around 10% on average actually go and do so. And we were trying to also understand this. Is it about the skills? Is it, I mean, we talk about mistaken optimism or naive ambition. Even if we take that into consideration, it's still quite a big gap. So it could be underdeveloped skills. We've talked about fear of failure. Are they risk averse? Levels of self-confidence are relatively low. They've got weak networks. Physical isolation. We found that didn't really help in terms of building up their confidence and their networks. This issue of lack of finance always crops up. I've got that really as debatable. If you read some work and if you talk to some people who say, look, everything's available, but there's no take up. Are they investment ready? A lot depends. It's very detailed stuff, but a lot depends at the level of the individual. A big thing that came across as well was this lack of perceived legitimacy. And I really want, I mentioned competencies, but I feel those last 3 bullet points there: physical isolation, lack of finance, lack of perceived legitimacy by customers and clients. This is something which goes beyond competency. It goes beyond skills, because really this is something that younger people themselves cannot change alone. So in a way, the lack of perceived legitimacy is a cultural problem. It's a societal problem that potential customers look on younger people and think, well, they're doing okay, but actually they're not really serious businesses. The other big point that came across was the intersectionality. This is a complex landscape. We have issues regarding gender, ethnicity, immigrant populations. We've seen a lot of movement of people, particularly across Europe. Would they engage with something that a nation state produces? I'm not convinced. I also feel strongly that the youth entrepreneurship group needs unpacking, because there are different. Helen talked about business life cycle. I did see in the presentation also, she did indicate that actually it's age of individual, because an 18-year-old is very, very different from a 28-year-old. So again, we've got to think very, very carefully about segmenting and targeting specific training skill sets for different types of people at different stages. I am also not convinced from our work that actually schools and institutions, well, certainly universities are doing an incredible job, but actually less than 50% go to universities. So again, I'm thinking about the people who are disenfranchised from engaging with the institutions. The other point, just to bring home this point about precarious jobs, there's been a lot of younger people, the evidence shows there's been a lot of younger people starting businesses, but they only last 18 months and they come away in debt. So again, we've got to really, really be careful about over promoting and over promising what entrepreneurship can bring for young people. So it's the definitions by others, the credibility with suppliers, institutional challenges. It's very difficult for younger people to actually get a credit rating, for example, because they're young, they've got no experience. Talked about intersectionality issues. Main metrics of measuring success. The conventional measurements for startups, we've got really, really, let's say, well-established measurements for establishing success and the performance of initiative. How can we measure success for mindsets How on earth can we use, what tools do we have to understand how an entrepreneurial mindset makes an individual more successful as an employee in life or as a business owner? I think actually we're in the dark ages in terms of understanding how we can look at mindsets. We could measure it, I suppose, in terms of well-being, but really, I think that there needs to be some work done on that, proper evaluations. And of course, while we may have super interventions for youth entrepreneurship, all of a sudden, all this is subject to uncertainties of the economic cycles. And again, we need to try and sort of, let's say, make young people and their competence and their skill sets understand how to deal with a decline in economic activity. So really, what can be done? Sensitizing policy to specific contexts and groups, and it's fantastic to see that the Youth Entrepreneurship Toolkit talks about this. I also know the YEPA, looking through the notes and everything, in a sense, our work chimes with what's going on there. But really, what I want to really drive home is that we need to understand the worlds of young people and give a voice to young people. It's great to see, again, in the YEPA that there's, I forgot what they call them now, but there's like a youth groups, council, maybe you call it council, where they can articulate what the down to earth, day-to-day grassroots challenges are. But I also feel that we've got to talk to informal as well as formal institutions and reach out to those. While I'm not dismissing the role of educational institutions, we've got to think about people who aren't in those educational institutions and give those people who are actually deprived the opportunities that entrepreneurship offers. So it's about talking with youth bodies and organizations and go where young people are without any take-up of policy or support. Young people are already doing their own thing. So really, we've got to build on those successes in the creative industries and through social enterprises. And again, to sell the Youth Entrepreneurship Toolkit again, showcase successes. I took a quick look at the toolkit. There's some fantastic success stories and cases there. But again, it's sharing that and making other institutions at regional and national level be receptive to those suggestions. So again, looking at the landscape, we're awash with initiatives at the moment for young people. In order to make this successful, there needs to be strategic political leadership within governments who can actually spend money on youth entrepreneurship. Now, there are some super initiatives and investment taking place. I know in some countries, they've subscribed to this and got national level policies. This is not uniform, although Jonathan Potton mentioned the recommendation at the highest level within the OECD, and governments sign up to this. I think there needs to be some real follow through by national governments in order to do this. We talked again and again and again about embedding evaluations. There was talk earlier on about the legacy of the YEPA. I feel the YEPA's, from my observation, my involvement, albeit minuscule, my understanding is the YEPA has been incredibly successful, but I feel that there needs to be a longer term evaluation of the YEPA. So really, this is what we came up with. And again, you can read more details about this in the report. I've got a link at the end of the presentation. And also, it's on the YEPA website. I've tried to go short term, medium term. Short term, interact where young people operate, not necessarily in business, but actually they've got their own groups. There's been talks earlier on about YouTube, TikTok, and so on. Not necessarily just that, but also youth clubs. Interact where they interact. Through intersectionality, it may involve going to women's organisations, community organisations where there are perhaps ethnic minorities involved, and really build upon that rather than reinvent the wheel. I've mentioned political will, but also encouraging young people to promote successes themselves. There's nobody's better at promoting the success of youth entrepreneurship than young people themselves. Not the OECD. It's actually young people themselves recommending to others. And I think somehow, in a way, in the big policy picture, sometimes that's missed. Medium term, there needs to be cultural change. I talked earlier on about the legitimacy, perceived legitimacy of younger people going into business. I do sense from the literature that actually the general population, consumers, don't necessarily take young people running businesses seriously enough. Entrepreneurship is a mindset, and business ownership. I still think this measurement, the evaluation, needs problematizing more. Mindset sounds fantastic, but I don't know how we can measure the success trying to change entrepreneurial mindsets, how that's articulated in action. Education, as much as I've said that institutions are really important, I think there we need to embed entrepreneurship education in the curriculum. It still isn't embedded sufficiently within the school or the university curriculum. I can tell you more about that. We've been trying to do this at the University of Liverpool with some success, but actually there's a lot of talk about it, but when you actually undertake research, it's less common than we're led to believe. It often is an extracurricular, not an embedded subject within universities. We need to continue evaluating, constantly changing, share best practice, and anticipate the dynamics of change. I'm going to stop now because of time issues. I can share the slides. There's two opportunities to read the document, so you've got no excuse if you can't find it with this. It's the same document on the University of Liverpool repository and also on the YEPA website. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Professor Blackburn. We can open the floor for questions now. So please don't be shy. You can raise your hand. You could probably just unmute yourself and come in with a question, or you're certainly welcome to put it in the chat as well. And okay, good. We've got a hand raised. Professor Singer, we'll go to you first.
Yeah, thank you, Rob, for excellent. Really, I enjoyed what you were talking about. And actually, I would like to get your PowerPoint presentation, even today, if possible. But I would like actually endorse 2 points which you raised. One is about embedding entrepreneurship in education. And this word embedding actually called in my memory what Alan Gibb used to say, that it should be embedded always. But I see the problem because it is, we are obsessed with curriculum. And if we cannot depart from curriculum design of learning process, we will never actually be honest toward the learners. If we as teachers cannot integrate fragmented pieces of knowledge into the relevant knowledge, if it is project-based learning or whatever, then we are really hypocritical. So we are expecting that students, that learners will integrate what we are serving them as fragmented pieces. Why we are not doing this? Another point which you raised is about metrics. It is so important to change the metrics from counting the number of graduate students or number of startups. It means we are measuring outputs, but we are not measuring, as you said, outcomes. And outcome is the mindset. So it is a really challenge for researchers, and maybe I would really be looking if the OECD can bring actually a group of experts, researchers interested in working on metrics. It is really in long term very important. And thank you for your actually really a lot of thoughts which you put on the table today.
Thank you, Slavika. Nice to see you. Just on the evaluation point, I think we all agree and would nod that we need better evaluation. I think that we need to think hard about the evaluation of outcomes, as you mentioned, particularly in terms of mindsets. I'm not sure if there is, maybe there is something that I don't know about, you know, measuring, understanding the outcomes of engaging with these programs and with at national and regional level. I'm not convinced that we see anything in terms of measuring outcomes.
Thank you. There are a few notes in the chat. So there's some comments from Simone. I'll try to summarize them. He mentions an intersectional element about, he says, young people that have the most to lose will always be less likely to enter entrepreneurship. Those with financial support, for example, from parents, basically have a backup plan in case things don't go well. So that's another good point to remember. And then he makes a second point about failure and policy failure, I think. And he's saying, you know, it's great to look at policy successes and models that we can learn from. Also important to maybe learn from failures and what went wrong. And I think that's an excellent point that I fully support. Although, you know, from the government's perspective, it's a bit more delicate because if it's a public initiative that received public funding, probably you don't want to broadcast that it didn't go well. But I think the point is that, you know, there's a lot that can be learned from these instances. So
David,
I don't know if...
could I just respond to that? I think they're excellent points. What's just been said reminds me of one of my positions, a number of them, was HSBC Professor of Small Business, where HSBC Bank, I'm sure you've heard of them, would give an endowment to the university every year. And I put this proposal to them and said, we really want to look at business closure and business exit. I think it's really important to learn from failure. Yeah, everybody wants to talk about startup. They want to talk about business performance, growth, and so on. And I'm saying, can we just think left of field? And they said no. And I said, why on earth not? And they said, because we don't want to see the bank of failure, and nor do we want to spend money on failures. Actually, after 3 years, I kept twisting their arm, and they eventually succumbed and agreed. And actually, that work has been one of the most successful pieces of work that I was ever involved in. And it showed the real, not just financial, but the emotional toll that business closure can have on individuals. The really plus point that came out of that was 6 out of 10 people who'd exited from their enterprise went and started another. So really, really important learning points. I fully agree that with the point that was made there, the parallels with public policy are also really, really significant.
Yeah, so there's, thanks, Rob, quite a lot of activity in the chat now. I'm having difficulties reading it all quickly, but there are many people thanking you for the presentation. There is a question from Julian, and it's about geography. And the question is, it may look like entrepreneurship is easier in cities or areas close to cities. Do you think that entrepreneurship mindset is more difficult to support in rural areas or post-industrial regions?
I think in post-industrial regions, definitely, when you certainly my personal experience of researching predominantly in the UK, as an empiricist researching in the UK, where you have let's say, a closure of a massive industry, maybe perhaps it might be coal mining, or decline of a particular manufacturing location, it's quite difficult to resurrect that through entrepreneurship alone. And indeed, the work done by Francis Green and David Storey in the northeast of the UK, around where Newcastle, Sunderland and so on, and Durham, when the coal mines closed, although millions and millions of pounds of money, including European Union money, have been poured into that region to try and develop an entrepreneurship culture, it's failed. And in fact, Francis Green's written about this, saying, look, can we resurrect this? So it's quite difficult, I would think, because of the mindsets. It is few generations to change. In terms of rural locations, I'm not quite as definitive in my view, because I feel that in rural locations, there's been something of a resurrection of entrepreneurship, where people have gone there to sort of semi-retire and start an enterprise again. Less so for younger people, I would think. It's less of an area of activity for younger people, but certainly people who have been attracted to going back into this sort of rural life, away from cities. Of course, at the end of the day, ultimately, I said it earlier on, we may have the best system of support for younger people, and they may start the business. There's got to be a demand for the goods and services. And if you're in cities, it's probably easier to find customers than if you're in a rural location. Probably the challenges are quite different. Therefore, the skill sets and the competencies are probably going to have to be a bit more marketing orientated. So it's difficult to give generic answers, but I really appreciate the questions, and it's food for thought.
Yeah, thank you. It looks like that's it for the questions in the chat. There are a few other comments, but we can read those later on as we're going on. I had a quick question for you, Rob. I'll take the opportunity while you're here. And you noted in the presentation that one of the challenges we face is engaging young people. I mean, you noted that we've got programs in schools and we've got quite well-developed programs in university, but obviously that only touches a small part of the youth population. And we certainly have public programs and we've got NGO-led initiatives. How do we actually get young people engaged in what's available? Do you have just a few quick ideas on what we could be doing better?
Of course. It's something of a everyday fix of mine that, in a sense, and I've witnessed it within the UK with government agencies. It's the same organisations that they go to because, in a way, because they're visible and they talk the same language, and they probably may have the appropriate person or organisation. Let's say that the apparatus and machinery exists, but at the same time, there's quite a lot of organisations, community-based organisations, that actually probably aren't necessarily interested in entrepreneurship, but they're organisations where people cluster for different reasons. Now, those organisations sometimes may have a business advisor in an informal way. They're not engaged necessarily with let's say, the public sector institutional framework. So it's important that policies, particularly youth entrepreneurship policies, get to, let's say, broaden their engagement with not necessarily standard formalized institutions. Now that means that policy has to be more risk-taking, but certainly you find a lot more entrepreneurial activity there than you probably believe, because these organizations have to be incredibly entrepreneurial themselves to be able to survive, and the people within them are often at the margins of the economy. So I feel that is the way in which policy could extend its reach. And also that hits so many other objectives about inequalities, about divisions in society, about well-being, and so on. In terms of how you can reach, how you can spread, and the entrepreneurship sort of pill engagement is through young people themselves. So, for example, I've not been involved in with the YEPA Council and the organisation behind the scenes, but actually engaging with young people is really crucial. We found that young people felt they did not have a voice. They want a voice within the policy making process, not fill in surveys and to tell them, you know, that we can aggregate the numbers and tell nice stories about them. It's about allowing these people to come into, let's say, where the power lies. It may be at regional level, maybe at local level, grassroots level, regional, and then at national level. So it's young people being able to actually express their views and experiences. Finally, if any of you have had children, youth, whatever, you can tell them, and you know, we can actually explain as sort of, let's say, seniors or experienced people, the best people to influence their behavior is their peers, their peer networks. And so again, it's about giving those peer networks the power to be able to somehow to be able to influence each other and share best practice. So again, that could be through youth networks, it could be through community-based organizations. So young people do understand and appreciate the power and the competences necessary to run a business. I'll stop now.
All right, thank you, Rob. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today and sharing your insights. I think you raised a number of fascinating points, and we can see in the chat that you really got people thinking. And so that's great. We really appreciate that.
Is it okay if I hang around for a bit longer?
Of course, you're more than welcome
really
to stay.
Thank you.
Of course, yeah. And you can, you know, get onto the chat if you want to respond to what people are saying as well. So we're almost halfway through the session today. We're going to take a short break. We've slipped a little bit on the timing, so I will propose that we'll take a 5-minute break. And then we've got an innovation. We continually try to improve the organization of these sessions. And in the last few meetings, a lot of people have asked for opportunities to network and discuss with each other. So we're going to do a little bit of an experiment today, and I'll pass it over to Helen right now to tell us how this is going to be organized.
Thanks, David. Yes, so we will be having a 10-minute networking session once we come back from the break. So you will all be randomly assigned into small groups of maybe 2 to 3 people to give you time to introduce yourself. Again, we're in new country groups. So some of these people you may have seen for the last time at the launch event, which has been 2 years now. So it's a great way to just introduce yourself, let them know what country you're from, what you do, and also just have a moment to chat, whether it's on the YEPA workshop or other youth-related policies. We just wanted to give you an opportunity. So again, once we come back, I will then assign you to a breakout room and call you back when we're ready to move on to our next case study presentation. But as David said, a 5-minute break, so we'll see you in 5 minutes at 11:28.
For example, on sustainability, on AI, you know, what is the digital idea about? How can you use AI in your business idea? That depends a lot on what topics come up. For example, a couple of years ago, we started with social entrepreneurship. Now it is, of course, more the issue of AI and still sustainability. And then they start developing their own business idea. They have to hand it in. So that's okay for us. You know, we, for example, eliminate things that have to do with drugs or cigarettes, things like that, or with alcohol. And then they have a school internal competition first. So we then have a school winner. The school winner goes on to a regional level. and then finally to a national or an international level. So we have different rounds. And I think that's also very important, or that's what the teachers and the students also give back to us. What they've learned through business at school are these skills that they're so hands-on, right? They do presentations. They work in a team for an entire school year, which is a huge, I mean, a long time for students at that age. They do presentations. They have to make sure that they get their story across within 15 minutes and also their business idea. They also have to present an exit strategy because we usually see hockey sticks when they talk about their business idea because, of course, they're so positive about it and don't really see what could happen. So basically, at the end, they present their business idea and compete against each other. And I think the issue of competition is really because it's not so much what they're winning, but more seeing other teams. And we've seen friendships come out of this. And for me, it's the first way of really building your networks. I'm a true believer in networks. I mean, a couple of people here I've known for many years. And I believe that networking is something that you can learn in school and that will really help you further in your career, whatever you choose on doing. Maybe you want to be an entrepreneur a couple of years later. You can check out business at school. You see some entrepreneurs, you get in touch with them. Also, when they do their presentations, as soon as we get to the regional and national level, we, of course, also have entrepreneurs evaluating these ideas. We have members of the board of large companies. So it's also here learning from each other, getting the feedback and having this real life experience and feedback that you would never get usually as a student, and getting connections. We've had 233,430 hours of coaches being involved. So our coaches go into the schools, they're like responsible for one or two teams. They work over the entire school year, and they bring the knowledge into the schools because, if you work and, for example, work at Lufthansa, or you work at one of the large banks, there's so much that you learn on how your job has changed, what skills you will need, and you sort of give that on and help students understand what life after school is going to be like, because that's, I think, very important that we all know earlier on what we would like to do after school. And it's getting harder and harder for students to really grasp on what the possibilities are. That was what we started off with in 1998, as I mentioned, with 30,000 students. Then we got to the point, say, this is an initiative that reaches 1,000 students per year. But what about all the others that also want to learn something about business and entrepreneurship? And that's why we started the Business at School Video Challenge. And this is, I think, also exciting or interesting for everyone around the world. I just had a participant here in the call from Pakistan. So this is an initiative that is truly available for everyone around the world. And also not just for high schools, but for any type of school. In Germany, for example, we have vocational schools that are participating. And this is also what we talked about earlier. One of you said you need the flexibility as a teacher. So this is actually a competition that is super flexible, that teachers can do whenever they feel they want to do it, or if they have one or even more students that they see that are really into making videos, that have a lot of competence in this, or need an extra curriculum to work with. So this is open either for students to participate or for classes to participate in. So what do we do there? In the video challenge, it's sort of a small version of our first phase of analyzing companies, but we also have a mix every year. We also have startups. I mean, if you are an entrepreneur, you can learn so much by just following, for example, the CEO of Mammut, which makes clothes, for example, Vorwerk or Kian, or we also always have an NGO. In this case, it's the Lufthansa Help Alliance. It's very modular, and we've also added more modules for training. You can also scan that. I will show it in a second, where we're constantly offering new material. Also, because of AI, how can you use AI tools, for example, to make a video? How do you use AI tools to find the best information? What do you need to know when you work with AI tools? So basically, we're also using the video challenge to hand out material on topics that we find very, very important and that are also skills that any entrepreneur will need in the future. And I think that's one of the things that I would like to stress at the end. Entrepreneurship in the digital age is more than just a business idea. I think that what we talked about earlier, it's so important that entrepreneurs also master digital tools, AI, and also how to deal with media, because a marketing without social media, for example, will be pretty tough. But how do you deal with, a customer faking reviews, whatever? So I think all of that is super, super relevant. And what we've created with the Business at School Video Challenge is to sort of combine business knowledge, digital and media knowledge, and give them various possibilities to really show their engagement. And also, as we talked about, how do they find or fact check everything? Our participants have full access to Statista, which is also available in English, and they can really access the official statistics of various countries, and it's a great way to understand statistics and to use those for your presentations. And if I have an ask for today, it would be to spread the video challenge everywhere, because I truly believe in it, and I also believe it's a great way for teachers to bring entrepreneurship and business knowledge into schools. And that, with that said, I mean, there's much more to say. Maybe just as a shout out, because we are international here today, we've also had the video challenge as an Erasmus Plus project by our schools. So this is just an example. We had schools from 4 different countries participating, and they worked on their video, like on their script by online in groups with 4 different nations, and then they came together and shot the video. And that was just sort of a really exciting thing to see on how cultures mixed, how everybody brought in their knowledge. And I think that's why I like the video challenge so much, because I've lived abroad and I love, having it internationalized. And it's basically a plug and play. And I think we need to offer teachers possibilities that don't take too much of their time, because teachers are already overwhelmed. And I think what we can bring to the table is encouraging things, helping them, understanding what the need is in the schools, and bringing offers that will really bring entrepreneurship into schools. So much from my side. But I will keep the video challenge open for another second. And you can take a look at the knowledge sites as well if you want to, because I think, and give me feedback if there's anything that's missing.
Thank you so much for that presentation. We have a few minutes for any questions or comments. So please feel free to raise your hand, drop a question in the chat, or just any questions.
Just wanted to jump in quickly. Babette, when you were talking, we could see your slides for a bit, and then when you were on the slide with the timeline, it sort of disappeared. So I don't know if you want to quickly highlight something.
Oh dear, that's awful. Let me just see.
Just very quickly, you can just flash us, and we'll share it with everybody afterwards. And we've got some questions now.
That's awful. Oh, wait, give me 1 second.
Yeah.
I'll do it again. Wait, I need to open up the slides real quick, but maybe you can start asking questions and I can open it up again.
We have quite a few hands, so I think the first one was
and while you're asking me stuff, I'm going to open up the presentation again.
Okay. Rob, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, Babette, fantastic. Really, really superb. Could I ask you which age group is this targeted at? By the way, I already looked at the QR code and I've downloaded the website and shared it with my colleagues at Liverpool. But is there a specific target audience? Because I think age groups are really, really crucial here.
Yeah, with business at school, we have an age group of the higher level because they compete against each other, because otherwise it would be unfair. So that's why we have, let me just open this. That's why we have the age group of 1 second. I'm not multitasking well, sorry. So that's why we have sort of the last 2 to 3 years of high school, but with a video challenge, because it's a lot more basic, and also videos, I think we also have a youngster award because, of course, maybe younger students cannot, will have their videos will be not as in depth as older students. So the video competition, the video challenge is open for students aged 14 to 20. So let me just share again.
So in
And
the
I'm
high
so
school,
sorry.
sorry, just to get my head around this, you say high school, that means roughly, is this pre-university?
16 to 18.
Okay.
Can you see the presentation now?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, let me just
Thank
switch
you.
to bigger. So does it work now?
Yes, we can see it now.
Okay, let me just put this on again. Yeah, so business at school, 16 to 18, video challenge, age 15 to.
It's still stuck on the timeline for some reason.
Is it now on this timeline?
Yes,
it is.
Is that the
yeah,
one?
but that's what I'm showing.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Okay,
Yes.
and this is video challenge again. Okay, so
Okay.
video challenge, can you see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, 14 to 20.
14. Wonderful.
Because of course, the problem is always you need to make it comparable. And I think it's super unfair if you have a 16-year-old present next to a 13-year-old, which I have at home. I think there are like ages between those.
Wonderful. I think next up was George. George, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah. Thank you for the presentation. I find it exciting how you also combine the Erasmus Plus funding, which is actually meant for young people, and organize a multi-stakeholder initiative, which is great. I was curious to know, like, since you also focus on providing education and knowledge about business entrepreneurship to young people and students, and of course with the partnership sponsorship from the BCG, as a consulting group, BCG has access to lots of knowledge. Impossible for someone to imagine how much knowledge goes across companies and industries. I was curious to know whether you might integrate some aspect of systems thinking for those who don't know what systems thinking is, a sort of taking a high level overview of an industry, maybe of an ecosystem, identifying the key players and how they all work together to shape the ecosystem. And I feel that with the help from BCG, this knowledge can be very helpful to future entrepreneurs. As you said, trying to identify the competition and what are some gaps a new business can innovate.
I don't know if this goes into the right direction. Tell me if I'm going wrong, but for me, of course, we can use this knowledge that we have within BCG for certain topics. Like, for example, if we have the issue of how do you develop a sustainable business idea, it's not just BCGers, but it's the network that we have within Business at School and BCG where we can ask as experts to, for example, talk about circular economy. But these special topics, we need to have, we go into the schools, talk to our teachers, talk to our students, what do they need? And but for the other material, we never use BCG material, but we use freely accessible material, for example, over Statista, because go run forward 2 years, and if they don't know how to really work with sources, they're going to be doomed. So for me, it's important to give students sort of the knowledge on how to work with sources, that are freely and openly available, and how to present these, but also give them a structure. What we've experienced in the past is first we had, we told them you can do your business idea, and now it's a lot more checklists on how to do it, how to build up the presentation as an example. Does that help, or is it not really answering your questions? Tell me.
Yeah. Analysis and research is something that we need to think more of nowadays in the knowledge era.
Yeah, especially with fake news out there. Definitely.
But I would like to also say that I challenge the statement that the age, that we need to separate them. I understand the concern, but also sometimes it doesn't mean that someone being younger doesn't also have the skills to work or compete with an older fellow.
Definitely. That's why we have the video competition. I mean, if you look at the videos, you can't really tell who's younger and who's older. Definitely.
Great.
Totally agree. You can take a look at it. The website is both in German and English, but the videos, the ones that made it, but there's going to be a really cool video from our Italian friends. You need to take a look at it, and then you'll sign up right away with anybody that you know at the age between 14 and 20.
Perfect. Thank you.
Wonderful. We have another question from Vicky, and then there's a few in the chat as well.
Hello. What I would like to understand, is it very similar to junior achievement, but in a more professional way? What you
So
are doing?
Franziska is here from Jugend Gründet, and so what we have a very close exchange between junior achievement, Jugend Gründet, and other big initiatives. We're very close, right, Franziska? I hope you agree. And we exchange a lot of ideas. I think each of us has a different aspect. For example, for us, the aspect of first learning about business as a whole, understanding what the concept of business is, how businesses work, as understanding it set by examples, and then going the entrepreneurial way, is what sort of makes this different to just doing a business plan.
Okay.
So we want them to understand a lot of the challenges that they have when they develop their own business ideas. Because, as I mentioned, I think they totally underestimate the issue of competition or of competitors. They underestimate who their real clients are, and also if their clients are going to pay right away. So, I mean, there are just so many things that they learn when they analyze companies, both in the video challenge and in Business at School.
This you are saying the young entrepreneurs, they underestimate them in the real world anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, just if you look at a company and you understand how business works, I think you learn a lot for your own business idea. I think it's really important.
Definitely. Yes, that's why it's very good, these initiatives like yours to get into schools so students, young people understand what entrepreneurship really is. So if they really want to proceed, they will really know what is the real world of entrepreneurship is, because they really don't know. And they start their own business. To start a business, it's easy, let's say, but is the
Long
after
term.
the problem. Is
Totally
what
agree.
we see here in the ministry. We have the program of youth entrepreneurship. Okay, it's fine. We help them with a grant, but it's the aftermath, the problem.
But you know what would be interesting? A lot of our participants actually do the video challenge first and then do junior achievement or other initiatives. So I think it's not, for me, it's important to say it's not a competition. It's really important to work together on this, right? We all want to achieve the same thing. We want to enable students, and I think this only works by working together. I mean, I'm always proud when one of our Business at Schoolers makes it to the competition from Franziska Metzbauer. Awesome. That's what I want to achieve. that they go further, that they use what they've learned, and that's the best way to do it. And as I said, I mean, I'm looking forward to many participants from Cyprus in the video challenge, because I think it's a great way to learn.
Okay, I will inform the Ministry of Education about you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Very, very welcome.
Well, thank you so much. I think that in terms of timing, we just need to move on to the next presentation. But Babette, if you have a few minutes to
Sure.
answer questions, perhaps in the
I
chat,
will do that.
that would be
Happy
great.
to do so. Happy to do so.
And
And
thank
as
you
I
so
said,
much.
there's only one. If you want to check out the I don't know if you can see it. I'll just contact me on LinkedIn. And Helen, David, thank you so much for having me, and I'm always happy to share my enthusiasm for the topic.
Thank you so much. So we are now going to move on to our next presentation, which will be on the European Year of Skills by Christine Kriveman, who is joining us as the team leader for this initiative from DG Employ. So I will ask her to go ahead and share her screen. Here we go.
Okay. Good afternoon to all of you. Do you see my screen?
We do. We see it in presenter mode, but we don't see it on the full screen.
Okay, let me put it on the full screen. Is that better? Because I see it.
It's still presenter mode, but we do see the slides.
Okay, okay. Is that okay? Can I start?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. So you see what's coming in the next slide, and me too speaking. So good morning to all of you from Brussels, and very inspiring presentation, Babette. Very interesting to listen in, and resonated a lot with me and what we did actually in the European Year of Skills as well. So let me quickly take you on this journey that we had from May 23 to May 24. And how this actually paved the way to what's coming these days, called Union of Skills. So I was going to ask you, but we are of course short of time. But just to see with you, why do you think Europe needed a year of skills? Why did we need to put skills as a topic in the awareness and spotlight? And there are some of the figures that are not very happy figures, as you know. Basically, we have this paradox that we have the most educated population in Europe ever. However, many businesses, 2/3, are struggling to find skilled workers. And if we look at the rather catastrophic PISA results, we see that the young people who will be landing in the labor market in some years, actually their competencies in reading, math, and science are not where they should be. And unfortunately, there is a risk that many of them will join already the 20% in Europe of adults who are low qualified. So with all this in mind, we launched the European Year of Skills. The European years are these exercises which put really spotlight on one or the other topic. Before we were preceded by the European Year of Youth. The Year of Skills focused on mindset of reskilling and upskilling, how to promote it. And when changing mindset, I think you will know that this is easier said than done. So that was a mammoth task ahead of us. And we kind of also set 4 more specific objectives from advancing investment and to also attracting third country talent, because even if we retrained all people that need retraining in Europe these days, we will still lack people helping our economy to thrive. So who was then the year? And here we were in very good company across Europe and beyond. We worked very closely at EU level, but very importantly, I think the importance was that the heart and soul of the year was really in member states. We established a network of national coordinators who were shaping and driving the year. And we also worked very, very closely with stakeholders, huge stakeholder engagement. We are very grateful to them, to the skills community, and we actually reached also out to many others. We have, of course, the traditional fora, but we worked a lot with businesses, with civil society, with social partners. It was really, really a collective effort, and as already said, also internationally. Now, this is a little bit trying to summarize what has stayed, what we think is actually paving the way to the Union of Skills. And one thing is clear, skills are very, very visible and skills matter. So if we look at the EU policy agenda, and I'll come to that later, skills are very prominent. And very importantly, and not so recent phenomenon, that this is across the different policies. It's really a transversal theme. It has been recognized that skills are a strategic asset for our competitiveness and for developing Europe, and for actually also allowing people to realize their full potential. So we have this roadmap, which is called the political guidelines. So we have a new governance in place, a new European Commission led by the former president, Ms. von der Leyen. And in the political guidelines, basically the topics which are represented in the political guidelines, these are the ones that matter. And between the political guidelines and also the mission letter, with whom the president entrusts her college, and she has also given quite a lot of tasks with relation to skills to our executive vice president, Ms. Menzatu, and you see that skills is also in the title of her portfolio. So to give you an indication, actually, what is coming out in Europe in these years, you can see already the political guidelines and mission letter. We have summarized here a couple of these things. And basically, now for the 5th of March, which is the planned date of adoption of a communication, Commission communication called the Union of Skills. And this will outline the roadmap for all policy work in the coming years. And you will see that there are some actions which are new, but of course we are building a lot on what is in place already through the skills agenda, but also through the European education area, which are solid frameworks, and we have been investing a lot of energy and also a lot of investment in terms of money. So we have also, now speaking about money, investment of course matters. And there is investment which is going into education and also into the skills. We have seen that, for example, in member states, whilst member states invest around 4% or so in education, into adult learning, member states invest very, very little compared, below 1%. We also looked at the investment, the EU investment, and most importantly, there is a proof that skills is productive investment, that it's really, we can trace how it is productive for people and for the economy. So every single penny, coming from whether it's the European Social Fund or any other fund, has its merit. Here you have the study we ran on the investment of cohesion funding in skills. millions and millions of people who are receiving support as we speak for their skills. And interesting for yourselves also, the study is available on our website, and you can also access the country fact sheets on this investment. Now, speaking about this, and I was very happy that there was a company speaking before me, because of course EU investment will not take us all the way. Yeah, so a public investment in member states, but also private investment is key. Also, will be key in the future. So everything which is public-private partnerships and making this work is really crucial to upskill our people. So more on the legacy. The year we saw very clearly, it also boosted everything that was in place. As said, we have a solid skills framework, skills agenda with many flagship actions. And today, for your audience, I wanted to put spotlight on those that are based into partnership approaches and more specifically Pact for Skills, centers of vocational excellence, and also mentioning the European Alliance for Apprenticeships. Now, these are all really public-private initiatives. Pact for Skills unites public and private at different levels, and in all industrial ecosystems. It is grounded in the industrial strategy, and they come together with their pledges, and I would also want to say their action, most importantly their action, because PACT has already trained 3.5 million people since its establishment and invested considerably into this as well, 310 million, and much more is coming. Now, centers of vocational excellence are wonderful tools in the area of vocational education and training, where through Erasmus funding, they join forces between the vocational education and training providers, but they also link up to higher education and, very importantly, to the businesses. And we have already 53 networks that we are funding across Europe. Often they are also transnational, and they're working on the topics of, let's say, today and tomorrow, such as hydrogen, such as greening as well, and seeing how the vocational education and training can also become and show its excellence. Now, another point on which is the legacy of the year is really that we think that we have managed to together strengthen cooperation. It's very clear that the challenges are such that none of us in our corner will be able to make it. Yeah, this as the year, but even the continuation, even more importantly, needs to be cooperation. And skills is often something at different levels that is characterized by very fragmented governance. If you look in member states, you have Ministry of Education, you have Ministry of Labor, and often they're not talking to themselves, to each other. And then you have the different institutions, you have the businesses. So it was very important for us in the year to bring everybody around the table, and also to showcase all good experience that exists in the countries to make this work and break the silos. And we had many good practices, to mention Finland, to mention Ireland, to mention Malta, which established Skills Council. So really great work moving us forward in the cooperation, in the spirit. And the same happened in our big institution in the Commission. We really worked across the different departments. And this is the way also forward. And now let me finish with the one point where, we started with this, that we wanted to change mindsets. And of course, awareness raising is an important part of this. And we had a multitude of activities in the year. Here you see the results, more than 2,000 events which are recorded in the map, but many more which actually took place. And all the ways how we reached out to people and businesses. And the result is good. So awareness raising does pay off. We see that people are both more interested, but very importantly, they're also more willing to take action and to train themselves. And this was an important part because changing mindsets at different level. And of course, it all starts with a person, but then, of course, very importantly, also in the business environment or in employment in general, for the employer to understand that one needs to invest in people and to provide these opportunities conveniently in working time, good quality, to be able to also reconcile with the private life. So this is very, very, very important to instill the culture of learning in the SMEs, where of course they often have the biggest access problems. So the results are good, and importantly, what especially proud of our campaign that we ran called Real People, Real Skills, where we collected 200 stories of Europeans on their different skills journeys. And this was really from all countries, from all walks of life, and very inspiring. So having a bad day and reading those stories is really, really a good thing. Seeing how skills change lives. They give better opportunities in the labor market, but very importantly, they also are great for your self-confidence, for your participation in the community, in democracy, and yeah, the skills change life. So read our stories. This is also one important part of the legacy of the European Year of Skills. I think that was my last slide, so I will stop sharing, and I'll be happy to take any questions from yourselves.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for the presentation. As we've done in the past, please feel free to raise your hand, ask questions, or make a comment. Julian, yes.
Yes, many thanks, Christine, for this wonderful and clear and to the point presentation. A question that comes to me, because you started by the paradoxic situations where indeed in the EU we have one of the most educated population and still we have difficulties to find skilled workers. And as we are here in more or less in OECD context as well, do other countries like the US, Canada, Australia, or I would say similar countries where many of the manufactured jobs have been exported to other countries face these kind of similar challenges, like these this challenge about skills, is it a bit everywhere or is the EU particularly hit by this problem? So I ask you to enlarge your perspective, but also other colleagues in the audience can comment. But yeah, that was just a question to me.
Shall I answer right away?
Please, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think unfortunately we are lagging behind in Europe, but of course the whole world faces these problems. I forgot to mention on the global dimension that the European Year of Skills inspired Southeast Asia, ASEAN countries to launch their own Year of Skills this year, so 2025, under the Malaysian presidency. Because yes, of course, skills, what I also forgot to mention, the time is short, that skills is only one part of the puzzle. You have working conditions in many sectors. If you look at the sectors that face shortages, very often, of course, people would not accept the job because working conditions are not adequate. So this is something that we worked also at the broader drivers of labor and skills shortages, and Commission came up with the action plan last year together with EU social partners, and we are going to continue also in the future with the quality, with the roadmap for quality jobs, with anti-poverty strategy, because there are many things which are interlinked. Yeah, but yeah, we are. I think, as also Draghi's report showed it, we are lagging behind our competitors, and we need to catch up very, very quickly.
Thank you. Are there any other questions on the European Year of Skills? Just wait one more minute to see if anyone has something that comes to mind. Okay, it looks like not. Well, thank you very much, Christine. It was wonderful to have you join us and to present the topic today. So thank you again. And,
Thank you very much. Thank you. Have a good meeting for the rest of it. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. We are now going to move to the roundtable discussions. So we're going to slightly adjust the timing, and we will go back into breakout groups, slightly larger this time than the networking session, in order to have an opportunity to discuss the different programs that you may be part of in your country, any kind of policies that have been implemented and have been successful, and to answer and respond to some of these questions that were posed at the top of the meeting. So what skills do you see as being critical for young people to develop in the coming years ahead? What kind of tools and resources could trainers be given and equipped with in order to better serve young people? What kind of support do young people need to assess the quality of information, as we talked about with the new types of content becoming more and more popular among young people? So keep these questions in mind, and we will go into the breakout groups for about 15 minutes of discussion before coming back all together and talking a bit on what was covered in our discussion groups. So I will now assign you to the different rooms. So give me one moment. About 3 minutes to talk all as a big group in terms of what we discussed in our breakout groups. I know, at least in my group that I was in, we had a very animated discussion with a lot of different ideas, but one that was coming to the surface a couple of times was the need to help young people understand information and how to trust it, and especially in terms of sources. So the importance of finding good sources, using good sources, but also identifying them in terms of not just trusting the first thing that is given. So especially with the introduction of AI technologies and more people turning to ChatGPT, for example, for information, those sources are not necessarily the accurate ones, or maybe they aren't even listed in the response. So sometimes you actually have to ask it to reference where it's pulling information from. So that was something that we talked about. I don't want to take up too much of the time, so maybe I'll pass the floor to the other groups. So feel free to raise your hand and jump in if you want to just talk about any of the key points that were discussed.
I was in group one, and we had a nice discussion about the different types of skills that are needed, and we sort of went back and forth between the more technical skills you might need to operate a business, your financial literacy skills, can you make a plan, and even some of the new things like the different AI tools, how can you learn to work with these and benefit from them?
Mm-hmm.
And then on the other hand, there's a wide range of competencies you need to run your business successfully that have nothing to do with that. Can you talk to people? Can you network? Can you sell yourself a bit? And so obviously we need to manage both sides of that. And then for me, the core question, which is probably impossible to answer, is, how do you actually 50-50, or should it be something different than 50-50? And I don't know if anyone's got any quick ideas, but I just throw that out there.
David, what do you mean 50-50?
I don't know. I mean, if you have a training course on entrepreneurship and let's say it's 10 hours, so do you spend 5 hours teaching hard skills? I can make a plan. I can prepare a financial statement against 5 hours of I can network and talk and sell myself. Or
I
should it
think,
be
yeah.
different?
I think it's more learning while doing things. Like, because otherwise you don't experience it. And if you don't experience it, it's not going to be in your brain, right? I mean, working on a presentation and then really holding it is a different thing than just doing a presentation and getting the feedback and everything. And same with time management. You only learn it once you've really hit the wall.
Fully agree, Babette.
So that's underlining you do it all together. And if you get the experience, then you, in theory, should be learning both at the same time. And the more you do it, the more you learn, better you get, increasing your chances for success.
And actually, the data shows that the second time and third time around entrepreneurs, they progressively become more successful in terms of longevity of their enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anyone from the third breakout group that would like to say a few words on what was discussed? Don't see any hands being raised. Well, we have about 4 minutes left, so I will go ahead and maybe talk about the takeaway lessons and next steps. So it was a really great workshop today. We really appreciate all of the feedback, the comments, the questions, whether it was in the chat or in the discussion groups. We look forward to hearing from you. If you enjoyed the networking session, if it worked, what could be improved, since it was one of our innovations this time around. If it's something you'd like us to do again in the next workshop. And as it was brought up a few times, there will be a legacy document that we'll start to prepare over the next few months leading up to the in-person event in Brussels. So if you have ideas, please get in touch with myself or David or Julian to share any ideas that you might have regarding that. And then keep your eyes out for the next workshop, which will be workshop 6 in our final online workshop event, which will be held in the spring or early summer, so in May or June. We'll communicate those dates with you as soon as we can. And we'll also be circulating a survey after today's event. So please fill it out. Let us know what worked and then also what you're looking forward to learning in the next workshop, which will be on the design and implementation of policies and programs for young entrepreneurs. So with that, we have 2 minutes left. We'll get out a few minutes early. Just thank you one more time for taking the time to participate today. We really appreciate it.
Sorry, Helen, can I just add one quick thing?
Yes.
Just really quickly, the idea is that we've got you working through these different workshops in different groups so that you can meet counterparts and colleagues in different countries and get to know more people. But I wanted to just make a quick point that, in this topic that we're covering today of skills and mindsets, there's a lot of material there. And we've got 2 more workshops coming up with other groups. And if you want to, I think that you could probably look on the website, look at the agendas. You'll see they're slightly different. They have a different focus. And if you've got time, you're certainly more than welcome to come to the other workshops on this topic, which are tomorrow. And then there's another one next week. Just want to let you know. So that's it. Thanks. It was great to see everybody. Julian?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. It was excellent. Thank you.
It was very nice today.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Thank
See you.
you.
Bye. See you,
Bye-bye.
colleagues.
See you.
Thank you. Bye.
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 So probably